light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. A lot of being a spiritual person, it seems, is trying to look at the world from a divine perspective. And I suppose we can speculate about that, but of course we'll never get there because I don't know if the human mind is capable of comprehending all that. But I sometimes wonder how it is that the divine has as much patience with humanity as it does. And of course, there are numerous people who have decided there is no divine. It's just all science. And yet, when you look at the ways people interact with science, the dynamics of the way people interact with science is not all that different from the ways people interact with any of the religions we want to name. But because always it comes back to this point of deciding what are the leaps of faith. What are you just going to decide is true because there's no way to know one way or the other, at least not at this point. The point I'm wanting to address, though, is to be open-minded to discovery, to walk the fine line between what is known, what is not known, what I'm open to learning, and how often I slip into saying, I've made up my mind, don't confuse me with the facts. And of course, there are so many conversations where somebody has facts and somebody else has different facts and somebody else has different facts, and they all insist that they're equal, that they're facts. And the definition of the word fact seems to be that it's what's true no matter who looks at it or no matter how. And yet, there was a wonderful book I read quite a few years ago called The Holographic Universe, which is basically noticing that the outcome of any experiment actually changes according to the expectation of the people doing the research. And so they kept trying to prove that it was a constant objective reality called fact, something objective that no matter who saw it, they always saw the same thing, and they couldn't find anything. And it's where they began looking at all of matter as alive in a way that we can't quite understand. There are some spiritual perspectives that will tell you everything is vibration, everything is energy, and scientific perspectives also that might agree with that. But I don't know that the human mind has made much progress in figuring out exactly what the implications of that is. And if everything is alive, everything is vibrating energy, can we develop a common language with all of it? But in the midst of all that, on a more basic level, I was having a conversation with a friend, and we tried to figure out what the distinction is between ignorant and stupid. And because there's some things we call stupid that are just a matter of ignorance, and then there are some things that are ignorant or described as ignorant that are really stupidity. The thing that distinguishes the two from each other for me is when you begin to integrate the dynamic of human choice. Ignorant to me is something that you don't know, haven't learned, but there's also the people who choose to remain ignorant. They don't want to learn, and that's where, to me, it bridges over into stupidity. If you know better and you do it anyway, and for example, you know that if you put your hand on a hot stove, you're going to get burned, and you do it anyway. And you've been told, you've been warned, it's right there, you know this is true, and you do it anyway. And yet, having said that, there's a part of my mind that suddenly says, no, wait a minute, not necessarily. Because there are times where people have done things out of self-sacrificing love. They do what they know will hurt them because they are seeking to advance advance the welfare of another person. You know, the idea of stepping in front of another person when a gun has been fired at them. Well, that means you'll be taking a bullet for them, as they say. You do that out of self-sacrificing love. And in one sense, it's a very stupid action because you know what's going to happen, and it's not good. But then if you don't do it, something tragic is still going to happen because the bullet may hit one of your loved ones. And so it becomes a split-second decision of deciding whether you value that person more than your own life. So it's difficult to come to really clear-cut definitions of these words because they're used in so many different ways. But what I'm trying to bring out in this discussion are the ways that we can apply intention and will and choice, that we can choose not to know something until we're ready. We can choose not to know something at all and get hit with the consequences of not respecting and integrating that knowledge. Or it can just be something that we haven't learned yet because we didn't know where to look. And I think most people would agree that being ignorant is far more forgivable than being stupid, except this blurry line in the middle of when you choose to be ignorant, choosing not to have the information. And is there ever a truly wise time and place to do that? Or would it be such a specific situation that it's unlikely to ever happen? If one discovers, as has been depicted in a few movies actually, if one discovers a technology and a power that is so vast that the protagonist in each movie chooses to obscure it and hide it or even do away with it, even destroy it, because humanity is not ready, is not mature enough, not wise enough to have that kind of power at their disposal, which is perhaps what a lot of people believed during the invention of the atomic bomb, that atomic energy is such that I'm sure there have been many people who questioned whether there was sufficient wisdom in humanity to manage it appropriately and wisely, or if this was essentially like giving the keys to your car to a 4-year-old who doesn't know enough about how to drive a car to do so safely, and winds up hurting other people, hurting themselves. It needs to be a certain appropriateness, but that, to me, is more where you're discussing wisdom and not ignorance or stupidity, unless you're choosing to let humanity be ignorant of certain forms of power and certain dynamics until such time as they have demonstrated, as humanity has demonstrated the ability to wisely manage that power and that resourcefulness. Another quote I heard attributed to Albert Einstein, who is credited with contributing to the development of the atomic bomb. And I think Albert Einstein would not have wanted to contribute to a bomb. He would have wanted to contribute to peace based on all the other quotes that he said. But the one I remember hearing at one point is that he didn't know what weapons would be used to fight World War III, but he was quite certain that World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones because of how terrible World War III would be. Better than all of that, of course, is to get to the point where there are no more wars, because we have finally figured out how to adequately respect and have dialogue and work through differences so that we don't need to kill anyone just because we disagree with them. One of my favorite passages in the Christian Bible is, I believe it's in the book of Isaiah, where it says, in the latter days when the house of the Lord is established, whatever that phrase actually means in practice, I'm not sure, that nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. They'll beat their plowshares or their spears into pruning hooks and their swords into plowshares, and that all the weapons of war will be reappropriated to peaceful uses and constructive uses. And, to me, of course, that day won't come soon enough. But it raises this question of how do we sort through all the questions? How do we orient to questions more than answers? That we're willing to ask a question instead of trying to impose an answer that may not fit the person to whom we presented it. That when someone says, this is the best kind of shoe for everyone, and everyone has to wear the same kind of shoes. Well, shoes are designed for different purposes. And the hiking boots that I wear will be wonderful going up a mountain, but they're probably not very good for ballet dancing. And, but the point is still coming back to, well, as I keep saying, finding my way. But the interesting thing about this song is I haven't sung it in quite a number of years, because the last time I sang it was at a church that wanted to do a talent show. And so I figured a talent show, that means everybody shares whatever they've got. And it's, in my understanding, it was not a competition. Absolutely not, never was. And I was thankful and gratified and blessed by all the wonderful contributions that were shared in the show. And some were more advanced and some were less advanced. And I really didn't care whether it was more or less. It kind of goes back to a witticism I coined a number of years ago, that the value is not in the skill, but in the participation. By having the courage to stand up and be part of what's going on. That you're not just a bench warmer, you're a participant. And maybe you participate with more skill or less skill, but the point is you participate honestly, authentically, with total commitment, giving what you have to give. And I applauded everyone who was in the show. And then they wanted me to do one of my songs also, which I'll share in a moment, but it was kind of confusing to me in that when I finished, everyone acted extremely embarrassed and I couldn't figure out why. And apparently they thought I did something really impressive and wonderful because of the musical accompaniment that was pre-recorded and this long song that I'd written and so forth. And I kind of thought not, because I'm really not a very accomplished musician. The only thing I had at my disposal, if any of them wanted to borrow it, they could have, was an electronic keyboard that had pre-programmed accompaniment. So as they're hearing this recording playing, sounding like this incredible marching band and everything, if they could have seen me when I recorded it, I'm sitting there playing one key at a time, because it really isn't, it sounds wonderful, and I'm glad if you like it, and I hope you do. But I was disturbed at their response because they acted as if we were in competition and I had just embarrassed everyone, which I had no intention of doing. And what I presented actually wasn't near as complicated as they thought it was. And some of my recordings have someone picking a guitar, which everybody seemed to think was really wonderful when I performed at a church once. And I said, no, I only know 2 picking sequences, one for 3/4 and one for 4/4. So depending on the meter signature of the music, if it was like a waltz, then I played the 3/4 sequence. If it was like a foxtrot or a marching something or other, I played the other one. Those are the only 2 I know. Most of what I do on guitar is only about 4 chords. I'm really not very accomplished. And I don't say that to put myself down. I say that to suggest it's just me using what I have to do as much as I can. And I think that can be a, not lesson, but it can be an encouragement to everyone else. If you have a lot, if you have a little, it doesn't matter, because the value is not in the skill. The value is in the participation. The fact that you got up and shared whatever you have to give and allowed it to be something that might be helpful to somebody else, might show them the next step they could try. Because a lot of what I'm doing really isn't that much, and people look at my set and I say, well, the backdrop, it's a bunch of bed sheets and 23 cans of spray paint. And it's things that you can do if you're willing to try, if you're willing to take the best that you have and find the right opportunity for it, pull the resources together, and you just might be more incredible than you think. So don't worry if somebody else appears better, because they may be doing something that's remarkably simple, and they may be glad to tell you how they did it. In any case, it's a rather long song, so I brought the verses for this one. But it's simply called Finding My Way. The sun not yet risen, I started the trail. Through forest, on tundra, over stones I prevailed. Hours passed slowly, the air became thin. At the top of a ridge, it all started again. For the mountain is bigger than I've ever dreamed. Much higher and steeper than at first it seemed. So I'm finding my way to a place oh so high, putting wings on my spirit and learning to fly. I let out the sail and it caught the first breeze. I sped through the waves with the greatest of ease, racing a dolphin, admiring a whale, seeing such wonders as makes all words fail. For the ocean is bigger than I've ever dreamed, more extensive and deeper than at first it seemed. So I'm finding my way to perceive what's below, in the vast world of water's unending flow. I let out the string and my kite upward flew. In moments it nearly had faded from view, though I felt the tug on my fingers so small. Straining my eyes didn't help me at all, for the sky is much bigger than I've ever dreamed. So open and endless, much more than it seemed. So I'm finding my way to a world without walls, a world full of spaces so wide and so tall. I sat in the darkness and then inward turned, applying some methods I'd only just learned, seeking a peace I could not outward find, concluding such peace would take more than my mind, for my soul is much bigger than I've ever dreamed. Enough for God's Spirit, bigger than first it seemed. So I'm finding my way to a walk with my God, the one who's been with me each step that I've trod. I went to the people I see every day, asking if anyone might know a way to be happy, a reason to smile, something to believe in for more than a while. But humanity's much more than I've ever dreamed, each one so different, much more than it seemed. So I'm finding my way to this family of mine, a way to give love to each person in time. And it really is about the participation more than about the skill, or the value is not in the skill but in the participation. And you never know where climbing a mountain might lead. You never know who you'll meet on the mountain, or what will happen, or what will follow it. How you will be different having climbed the mountain. I sometimes tell people that when you climb a 14er, everything below is small. And it seems to me that when you climb a 14,000-foot mountain, you're never the same. It changes your perspective on the rest of your life. And suddenly, a whole lot of things that maybe you never thought to try before, you're willing to try. And who knows how far it will go. I remember a poster I saw when I was in high school that was this 2-lane paved asphalt road going up and over so many hills into the distance. And way at the beginning of the picture is this jogger in a yellow shirt and some black jogging shorts. And the caption on the poster was, "Only those who will risk going too far will ever find out how far they can go." And and I talk about God because God is real to me, but I understand there's some people who don't believe in a divine being, and that's fine. If it's that necessary, then the divine has the ability to manifest to them. And if the divine doesn't manifest to them, they shouldn't act like he did. He or she, it, whatever God is. I concluded some time ago that the divine was the embodiment of highest wisdom and greatest love, but beyond that, I don't know what to say. I don't know that the divine is necessarily human, though there's a lot of, they say, anthropomorphized descriptions assigned to God that give God human qualities that God may very well not have. And yet, if God is all of that and more, then maybe God can be any of those things without being confined to any one of them, so that God can be whatever you need. And there are times where things are going wrong and I can't find the resources or the community or whatever I need to deal with it. And things go so wrong, like when I lost my house in Northwest Denver, and I prayed and I begged for a solution and I did all the looking I could, and after 6 months or so, there just was no solution. And it's times like that when you wonder if God is real, or maybe all the atheists are right and I should just give all the spirituality up and do nothing. And then, at the most unlikely moments, synchronicities and solutions happen that defy probability and statistics, and in ways that it's almost like someone tapping you on the shoulder. And in those moments, I have a really hard time saying that God doesn't exist. But whatever God is, I think I'm fairly certain that he's not what any religion or church has said. So it leaves us with, each of us, with the difficult task of discernment and figuring out, where do we go from here, and what does it mean, and how does it all add up, and allowing everyone to draw the conclusions that their particular life experience persuades them are real. And if they have not had experiences of God, as some have called them, then they shouldn't pretend that they do. But at the same time, if there are people who have had experiences of God, they shouldn't pretend that they haven't. To me, it comes down to this basic point of integrity. And each of us trying to find a way to live our lives with integrity and to be who we are and what we find ourselves to be, and as much as possible to ponder, why do I believe what I do? And where did this come from? And am I just repeating something, or have I actually taken the time to think about it? Because if I take the time to think about it, I might discover that there's even more there than anybody told me. And I might be the one to find the next step or the next chapter or the next level of wow or aha. Or it kind of reminds me of the atheistic scientist played by Jodie Foster in the movie Contact, who is an atheist. She doesn't believe anything is out there, and then has this experience of, I don't know, would you call it higher technology, an alien species that gives her a way of supposedly visiting them. And she's friends with a man who's a minister who takes a spiritual way of answering things. But both of them are essentially looking for what is truth, and how do I relate to this, and how do I grow when I'm confronted with something that is so beyond my explanation. And when she's after her journey, the scientist is questioned by representatives of the United Nations, and she has to concede that as a scientist, she can't prove anything that she's experienced, and yet her experience impresses upon her that everything she experienced was absolutely real, that it wasn't some hallucination or delusion or what have you. But neither she nor her minister friend nor anyone on earth had any explanation for what she went through and how she saw things and experienced things and felt pulled in various directions and experienced a reality that was beyond anything she could have imagined. And so in that sense, I'm not trying to persuade anyone that God is real or is not real. I'm encouraging all of you as we wind up this episode to live with integrity. And if there is something more that's needed, trust that it will come to you. But don't be afraid of the discoveries that cross your path, because they could be the next chapter that you need to explore. Thank you very much for watching.